Everywhere except here. That is called selective hearing. Okay. December 1st, Revelation 30, we're talking about the two beasts. Oh, we have a introduction, just a review. We've gotten so far into this is like 16th week. Chapter 1 was the introduction, the letter to the seven churches revealing the purpose, because they're telling them the things which must shortly take place. Got that? Things that must shortly take place. How do you define shortly?
Before those people died.
Yeah, I'd say before those people died. Shortly going to take place. Now, some of them were going to die before, but it is talking shortly. Chapter 2, letters to each, chapters 2 and 3, letters to each of the seven churches, the good, the bad, and the unacceptable. Says, if there's something bad, repent of it. He tells them, I know the things you're going through. And he says they must overcome. Every congregation was told about things. If they overcame, there would be a reward for them. Chapters 4 and 5, there's a scene in heaven. And the Lamb has been given the scroll that he is going to open. And that scroll is the same scroll from Daniel chapter 12. Chapter 6. Okay, the six seals open, revealing the future judgments, the first through the fourth. Those are the future judgments. The martyrs are told to wait. In the fifth seal, the great day of the Lord's wrath has come upon Jerusalem, is the sixth seal. So there we have in chapter 6. Chapter 7, the 144,000 are sealed. They are the ones that are coming out of in the middle of the Great Tribulation, but they're going to be coming out of the Great Tribulation. And when is the Great Tribulation? When was the Great Tribulation? The Great Tribulation was the first century. Jesus said, in this generation, all these things will be fulfilled. In this generation, including the Great Tribulation. Chapter 8, the seven trumpets are introduced. These are partial judgments to bring them to repentance. We're told in chapter 9, verses 20 and 21, and still they did not repent. Okay? All of these, still they did not repent. Chapter 10, a scroll is sealed up, verses 1 through 4. Another angel, the same angel from Daniel chapter 12 and verse 7. In Daniel chapter 12 and verse 7, the angel is told to seal it. He says, I'm going to seal this up. Don't worry about it. This is for a further time. This same angel shows up and says, no more delay. The mystery is finished. What is the mystery? What did Paul say the mystery was? The mystery was that the gospel was going to be preached and that Gentiles are now a part of the kingdom. Paul says this is a great mystery that has been held. The great mystery. John is told he's going to prophesy to many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings. That's what he's told. Chapter 11, the temple is measured, outside court is given to the Gentiles. This, chapter 11, is the destruction of Jerusalem. Okay? Come back to this in a minute. The two witnesses, we believe it's the law and the prophets, prophesy, and a great slaughter takes place. Those who slaughter rejoice over the dead, but the dead come back. The seventh angel sounds, signifying the kingdom of God. The church now reigns outright. The Jews have been destroyed. The first woe is past. The first woe is the destruction of Jerusalem. Chapters 6 through 11 is about the destruction of Jerusalem. First woe. We're going to move on to chapter 12. We are introduced to the next scene. The woman, the people of God, brings forth the male child, which is Christ. He is caught up to heaven and begins to rule. At that moment, Satan can no longer accuse and is cast down. He begins to persecute the woman, the people of God. They are protected, and Satan, the dragon, goes to make war on the rest of her offspring. Slow down. Is that slow enough? Is that comprehensive enough that we grasp what's going on? It's like you've watched the first episode of a movie last week, and before we can begin the next episode the next week, they say, this is the things that you have seen. Does that pretty much cover any questions about what we've covered? Chapter 13 begins where chapter 12 leaves off, how Satan makes war against Christians. Spoiler alert. Sometimes when you tell them what's going to happen, people get mixed up in this. But here I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Chapter 6 and 11 deal with the judgment of Jerusalem and the Jews. Okay? And we read at the end of it, chapters 12 through 20 deal primarily with the judgment against, in reverse order of their introduction, Rome, the false prophet, and the dragon. That's what we're going to see next. You ready? This is yes, and that's no. Just let us go home. We want to get to Cracker Barrel. All right. This is the end of Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. And the dragon was enraged with the woman because everything he has tried has failed. Now he went out to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Who are the rest of her offspring? Christians. We know that. They've got the testimony of Jesus Christ. If they don't believe in Jesus, they don't have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So that's who he's making war with. Chapter 13 begins to tell us about this war. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw the beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. When I told you last week that this lesson was online, how many of you went and watched it? You'd have all the answers to this. Okay, this is all in a lot of pictures and graphics, so it's easy to understand. All right, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea. What does rising out of the sea mean? Okay, as a general rule, when something comes down from heaven, it's a spiritual thing. You see angels that came down from heaven. Now we have something coming out of the sea, and something's coming out of the sea. It's an empire or a nation. If you go back to the book of Daniel and you see this beast rising out of the sea, it's the same one in Daniel that we're reading in Revelation chapter 13. It's coming out of the sea. When something comes out of the earth, typically, it's of human origins. It's a man coming up from the bottomless pit, evil and death. Sweeping generalization, but that helps you to understand. Is that plain enough? You want me in the picture?
Sure, Matthew.
Okay, those are the general rules. So when you see these things, when something's coming out of the sea, it's an empire or a nation. And it's color-coded. I've color-coded everything so that you'll be able to grasp what this is. Okay, I saw a beast rising out of the sea. Now the beast which I saw, this is the beast rising out of the sea. They're both in yellow there. And I have more for this color-coded. He says, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, on his heads blasphemous names. This is in red. Sorry, Katie, this is not going to make much sense to you. But we're going to draw these from 3 different scenes here. All right, so he says a leopard, a bear, and a lion, and a beast. Those are the 4 right there. Now we go back to Daniel. I'll look at your colors again. I saw in a vision by night, and behold, 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. Here we are. It's coming out of the sea again. The same one that we see in Revelation 13. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea. Remember, empires come out of seas. Each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. And I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear. It was raised up on one side, had 3 ribs in its mouth, between its teeth. And they said thus to it, arise and devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. Notice he doesn't describe what this beast looks like. It just says it's dreadful and it's strong. He doesn't say it looks like Bigfoot, it looks like a dinosaur. He just said it's a great beast. It's dreadful. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Remember I had the red back here? In Revelation 13 has 10 horns. This one has 10 horns. Everybody got the picture so far? We're seeing the same thing in Revelation 13 that Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 7. It's the same beast. But, same beast there, Daniel, and I've said this before, Daniel is looking forward at these kingdoms. When Daniel writes this, he is in the first kingdom. He's under Nebuchadnezzar. Remember in, we haven't got to Daniel chapter 5 just yet. In Daniel chapter 5, we find the end of the Babylonian Empire. Chapter 6, we find that he is in the Medo-Persian Empire in that. So he's looking forward at this. John is looking back as these things have happened in history. Do you grasp that? Seeing the same beast, but just like if I'm here and I'm looking back, I'm going to describe that Wes, and then Darcy, and then Grace, and then Carolyn. But if I'm in back, who am I going to see first? Carolyn, then Grace, and then Darcy and Wes. Okay? They're seeing it from different vantage points, but they're seeing the same thing.
Sorry, I just got a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier on one of our lessons, we talked about like this, it has a feet of brass, gold, and that represented the different kingdoms. So my question is, Satan gives the power to this beast with different sections, like the lion, the bear, and the leopard. Could those be like evil figures?
Nope. The beast has consumed all of those.
Well, they're empires.
Yes, he's consumed them. See, the Medo-Persians took over the Babylonians. Greek or Macedonia took over the Medo-Persians. Now,
Sorry. So
Yep.
with the gold statue, this
Mhm.
creature is all the bad empires.
it is all the empires, but it is the same four empires. The same four empires in Daniel chapter 2 are the same four empires in Daniel chapter 7, are the same four empires in Revelation chapter 13.
Empires is the gold and the silver.
Yep. Yep. And so he says, there we have all of these. Let's see, have I done that one before? Yes. So we see, and I've color-coded these so that you know. Okay? So it has the characteristics. So we're keen and we're keyed in to see, oh, I recognize those. Even though the scriptures don't color-code them, I color-coded them so that you can see that they have the same characteristics of this. This beast, this terrible, dreadful beast that Daniel sees, the one that John is describing, and John is living in the time of this. Remember from Daniel chapter 2, he says, in the days of those kings, there's going to be an empire that's set up, which shall never be destroyed. And that empire is the church. And when was the church set up? Acts chapter 2, in the days of those kings. We begin to make all those connections. We're not talking about the 21st century here. We're talking about the first century, because all of the marks are there. Even the 10 horns. There we are. This is what Daniel sees in Daniel chapter 7. He sees the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the dreadful beast. There they are. Babylon is the lion. The Medo-Persians, when it says it was lifted up on one side, the Persians were stronger than the Medes. This is all history. If you read your history books, this is exactly how every history book will describe these kingdoms. I'm not making this up. Leopard is Greece, and the dreadful beast is Rome. Here it is what John sees. The beast rising out of the sea, he has like a leopard. And what was the leopard? It was Greece. That was the last one that they took. He had feet like a bear. Okay, they took part of the all the Medo-Persians. He had a mouth like a lion. There's the characteristics. I've gone through these over and back to see there is no misunderstanding that what John is seeing is what Daniel saw. No confusion. So we're not talking about the Antichrist in the 21st century. We're talking about this beast rising out of the sea in the first century. Okay? There's your statue. Look, I've even got it color-coded. Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And 33 AD, or 30, depending on how you count your years, is right there. Nebuchadnezzar's vision in Daniel 2, Daniel's dream in Daniel 7, and John's vision in Revelation 13 all describe the same 4 empires. Any doubts? Any questions? Pardon me? Convenient. I like pictures. We think in pictures. Therefore, the beast rising out of the sea in Revelation 13 is the 4th empire in Daniel 7, and the legs of iron and feet of iron and clay in Daniel chapter 2. And the reason why the iron mixed with clay, the Roman Empire was very unstable. And what became the undoing of the Roman Empire? If you know your history, 3 things: internal, external, and civil wars. The beast in Revelation 13:2 is the Roman Empire in the 1st century. That's what he's seeing. Verse 3, and I saw one of its heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and its deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. We talked a little bit about this last week at this mortal wound. Who is the head that was mortally? Mortal is thanatos, and thanatos in Greek means dead. It was dead. It was seen as dead. It wasn't just a bad, what do they call that when you get a bad wound underneath your... It's called a bad wound. You got that. Subdural hematoma? A closed head injury? You know, but this one, as if it's dead. He sees it's dead. Okay? Daniel's vision in Daniel 7 helps us identify who this is. I put this warning here. Warning, history teacher, your understanding of the past may be corrected at any time. I put that there. All right, Daniel chapter 7. He says, and I saw in the night visions a 4th beast, dreadful, terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring and breaking in pieces, trampling the residue with its feet. That means it conquered all of these kingdoms. How did Julius Caesar come to power? What did he cross? To cross the Rubicon. That means he bought one of these Jeeps. You ever wonder why these Jeeps driving down the road say Rubicon? Because that was when Julius Caesar came to power in 49 BC. He crossed the Rubicon and took the empire. All right. Oh, I get caught. And it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom the 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots, and there in this horn were eyes like eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. And we're going to see that here in just a minute. And Daniel is seeing exactly what John is describing in chapter 13. It says it had 10 horns. Is John seeing a beast with 10 horns? Yes. Before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And I wonder what those 3 horns were. And you'll soon find out who those 3 horns were, because it really is, if you know your Roman history, you'll see it immediately. In Revelation 17, verses 9 and 11, he's really describing the same thing. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, and the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must continue for a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition. Boy, you talk about a mystery here. But here in Revelation chapter 17, he's describing the situation that's happening in chapter 13. He's kind of reviewing it for there. Okay? I also have 7 kings. Okay, Daniel chapter 7, we'll go back to that. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the other kingdoms. And it shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it to pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings, who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. Daniel says the same thing that Revelation chapter 17 says. They're talking about the same situation. How do we know? The numbers are all identical, aren't they? Am I going too fast? Okay. 10 horns, 10 kings. Now we need to talk a little bit about the difference between a dictator and an emperor. Was Julius Caesar an emperor or a dictator? He was a dictator. The first emperor is Augustus. Historians, and it's not just because I say, historians will say, Julius Caesar was a dictator. The Senate were the first ones to install Augustus as an emperor. And starting with Augustus, they became emperors after that. Maybe key to know, maybe not. But he crossed the Rubicon in 49 BC, and by 45 BC achieved unchallenged power. Augustus was the first empire. The Senate confirmed his position in 27 BC. We have pictures of him confirming him. And if you believe that. All right, there's your list. You can look anywhere in any history book, anywhere, and you will see the same names. I'm not configuring these just to say. Okay, on the left is with Julius Caesar, the beginning. But on the right is the first emperors. The first 5 are, remember we talked about the ones that were and were no more? Okay. See those 3 in yellow, Galba, Otho, and Aulus? And then next is Vespasian. Those are the 4 emperors in the year of 4 emperors. Okay, this was the civil war that took place. And I know that's a lot to take in, but it has a direct bearing on exactly what Daniel has seen 500 years, 600 years really, before it happens. He's describing this, that 5 kings are, 1 isn't, and he takes and defeats those 3. Okay, there they are. There's your 10 horns. The 10 horns in the early 20th century, when, let's see, was it Woodrow Wilson? Anybody remember what Woodrow Wilson, I know you guys weren't there. What did Woodrow Wilson, what did he want to develop? The League of Nations. You know how many countries there were in the League of Nations? There weren't 10. There were 41. And then they developed this thing called the United Nations. You know how many of the original United Nations were? Not 10. There were 40 or 50. Okay, so people have said, you see, those are the 10 horns. And now we have the G7. There's G8. How many do you think there are in the G8 countries? 8. Yeah, people keep inventing all of these numbers and they forget. History says that in this time, and so we begin to have an idea of exactly when this book was written. No, this is, I've included on the one on the right, Julius Caesar, but he was not an emperor. But I'm just saying there's 2 ways to calculate the 5 that were. Okay, when we come down to number 10, Titus, he's the one that's not going to rule for very long. He only rules for 10 years. So we can get an idea of this. So we have the Roman imperial dynasties. This is the year of 4 emperors. Can you see it all outlined in red? Galba, Otho, Aulus, and Vespasian. The year of 4 emperors. Guess how long all 4 of those occurred in which year? I didn't say that very correct, did I? These were all emperors in the same year. Beginning, even though it says 68 to 69, it was all within the space of 1 year. They had 4. This was the Civil War. This is what people thought was the end, going to be the end of the Roman Empire. The head that was mortally wounded. Okay, I get to talk about, okay, here we are. This is from a PBS special. I have it, so one of the most turbulent years, and these are modern historians who say this. Okay, we've had 2,000 years to look at this. One of the most turbulent years in Rome's history, Otho, Galba's deputy, is passed over as heir. He rallies the Praetorian Guard. Remember the Praetorian Guard from the book of Acts? Who cut down Galba and his heir in public in a parade with their heads, and parade their heads through the streets of Rome. Civil war erupts as different generals fight for the throne. Otho and Vitellius reign briefly before Vespasian is named emperor and founds the Flavian dynasty. When it says his is different from the others, he forms from the Flavian family. And from that time on, they come from a family. Before that, you had people that were not part of the family. I told you there's going to be a lot of history, didn't I? All right. The civil war in the Roman Empire started when Nero committed suicide in AD 68. 3 emperors fought for power. Each was killed or committed suicide. Vespasian was in Judea laying siege to Jerusalem. He puts his son Titus in charge of the siege and goes to Egypt to get grain for supplies. While in Egypt, Vespasian is named emperor of the Rome in 69 AD. Vespasian returns to Rome, ends the civil war, and consolidates power, and Rome becomes even more powerful. Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat in it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword. Now do we begin to understand what the red horse was about? He's taking peace from the earth. It's the civil war. This horse there in Revelation chapter 6. It's all there. Nero Redivivus. Remember we talked about this last week? Nero commits suicide, and there's a rumor, there's a myth, there's a legend that Nero has gone to Parthia to get the troops, and when he returns to Rome, he's going to destroy Rome because of what they have done. Okay? This is in history books. You can read all about this. Okay? Nero revived. The myth persists to the end of the first century. At the end of the first century, they still believe that Nero is going to come back to life. But we all know he's not. Okay? That's part of the head that was wounded. Okay. The head that was wounded on the beast may be seen as the civil war that threatened to kill the Roman Empire. But Vespasian returns to Rome to stabilize the empire. The 3 emperors who tried to gain power, Galba, Otho, and Vitellius, are overthrown with no real power and are seen as the usurpers rather than the rulers. Remember the 3 that he killed? That's it. Yeah, and disheaded. So they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast. Who's the beast? Last chapter, the beast is the Roman Empire, the first beast. So they worship the dragon. Who's the dragon? We saw that in the last chapter. They worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And why is he giving authority to the beast? The last verse of chapter 12. He goes to make war on the saints. He has this power to influence these people, and when to kill a movement in its infancy. You don't wait till it's full grown. You're going to try to kill it when it's a baby, when it's young. And they worship the beast, Rome, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? They have overcome a civil war. Vespasian is so powerful, he overcomes, and they say, who's able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great things in blasphemy, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Emperor worship, also known as the imperial cult. Anybody heard of this before? You'll recognize it here. This is a coin, and this is from Farrell Jenkins, a member of the church. He's an archaeologist. I've gone to see him in person. How many people have ever seen Farrell Jenkins? Fabulous archaeologist. Okay, this is from his collection. And anybody here read Greek or Latin? I could really butcher it, but this right here, it says Tiberius Caesar Augustus, son of divine Augustus. Emperors became gods here. And people will say the imperial cult was seen throughout the first century. The coins minted for each emperor bears out this evidence. And you can find the coins that are all talking about their divinity in this, speaking great things. The dragon is Satan, identified so in Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan. So we're just identifying these people so you know. Who gave the beast its power? The dragon. To worship the beast is to worship the dragon. Matthew 6:24. No one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll be loyal to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. If you are not worshiping God, guess who you're worshiping? Satan. Okay? That's the only 2 choices in the world. When you think, well, I'm just not going to worship God, you're worshiping Satan. I know that's an overestimation. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast who was able to make war against him? And he was given a mouth speaking great things, blasphemies. He was given authority to continue 42 months. Here we have Vespasian. He is called Rome's greatest emperor. This is by a modern historian here, and you can look other places, and they consider Vespasian to be one of the greatest emperors because he consolidated the power of Rome. And this has a direct bearing on them talking about how great that he is. When Vespasian became ill in his last days, he is noted to have said, woe is me, I think I'm turning into a god. Now, they claim he was saying this rather facetiously because every emperor who dies becomes a god. Every emperor that dies becomes a god. The first beast is Rome, also the Roman Empire. Okay, 6 and 7. I'm going too fast, aren't I? Where do I need to slow down at? Okay, we have. What I wanted to show is no, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so we see that they are worshiping the empires, the emperors. So Vespasian, and I think I have a picture in here later on that shows in the city of Pompeii, they have a relief that's carved that shows them making a sacrifice in Vespasian's temple. Yes, and emperors were worshipped while they were alive as well, but they officially became divine when they died. That was just, and he says that when he comes to the end of his life. So we know that that is something that emperors were often deified upon death, and this is N.S. Gill, ancient history and Latin expert. Okay, he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given to him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. And that is exactly who John is to prophesy about, many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings, from Revelation chapter 10. Now, people have identified this as being the Antichrist in the 21st century. We're still in the first century. This is not the Antichrist. It's not a one world ruler. It is not, what did George Bush call them? He called this the New World Order. Remember when he called it the New World Order and everybody lost their minds? Anybody remember that in 1991? The New World Order? He called, when they were invading, when Iraq had invaded Kuwait, and he said, this is the New World Order. We're going to protect, we're going to gather together. This is a new world. And people said, oh, and it isn't. We're still in the first century here, okay? And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of the offspring who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So the dragon, who is Satan, gives power to the beast. And the beast is the Roman Empire. We have taken care of up to chapter 11. We've seen the judgment against Jerusalem and the Jews. Now we're moving on to the judgment against the beast. And when we get to chapters 18, 19, and 20, we're going to deal with pour out the bowls. That's the judgment on them. But up to this time, he's showing us who they are and what they're doing. And he needs to write this to the 7 churches to let them know. Are you supposed to worship the beast or not worship the beast? Should you get the mark of the beast and serve the beast, or should you be willing to suffer death? Who is the woman? In
her. Virgin Mary?
No, it's not the Virgin Mary. The woman is the people of God who have brought this. You go back and do your genealogies. The woman is the one who brought along the genealogies, the people of God, who made sure through the lineage that Christ was going to be born. If you are, no offense against Catholicism, but Catholicism says the woman is the Virgin Mary, but she's not, because she never had her feet on the moon. It's talking about this woman. If we go back to Revelation chapter 12, we see that the woman is the people of God.
Would that woman just represent
Could it represent birth?
Well, I mean, the way I look at it,
Who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Right. Okay. And what was before Christianity? The Jews. And before the Jews it was Abraham. There's always been, if you go all the way back to the book of Genesis, I'm going the wrong way chronologically here, but it brings it all the way up. And God has made sure. That's why when we read the book of Genesis and Exodus, and we get through the book of Numbers, and we get up through Joshua and Judges, and we get into 1st and 2nd Kings, and 1st and 2nd Samuel, we see this lineage. Why is it that we get to the end of the book of Ruth and we're given all this genealogy? Ties it all together. That is, in a sense, that is the woman. The woman is the one who has brought this all along and eventually gives birth to Jesus.
That would fit with God telling Adam and Eve, the seed of the woman would crush the head of the seed of Satan.
And who is the seed? And who is the seed of Christ? Yep. So it's going all the way back, and remember, the book of Revelation is a book of symbols. And how would you symbolically show this movement that brought Christ into the world? It's unmistakably that it is all of these people that have brought it. If you read the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, all of these people, and they are representative of what brought it into this. It is not Mary, although she was a part of it. It is all of these people. It is through these people that we never read about in the silent period between Malachi and the birth of Christ. It's all of those are part of that woman that made sure it was brought.
All the mothers are in the one woman.
Say that again?
All the mothers
Yes. Yeah.
are the one woman.
Yeah, and because it doesn't mean that there's no men in there, but it's representative of what brought the Messiah into the world. Okay? Okay? It's a big picture, but it's what symbol could you find that would represent all of what God has done to preserve that lineage? All the way from Moses, whom they tried to kill all the babies in the book of Exodus, and all of those babies that they tried, and he describes it here earlier, where they tried to kill the babies, tried to kill as soon as it was born. Okay, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with a sword shall be killed with a sword. Here's the patience and faith of the saints. Satan has employed the Roman Empire to kill Christians. And here it is. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. Listen to this, is what he's saying. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. These things have been designed. We go all the way, is it the next one? We go all the way back to Revelation chapter 6. They're crying underneath the altar and saying, how long before? Until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth. And the white robe was given to each of them, and it said to them that they should rest a little while longer. Why? Until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren would be filled as they were, was completed. That's what's being described right here in Revelation 13, 9, and 10. If you're going to go to captivity, you're going to go to captivity. If you have an ear, listen. Some of you are going to go to captivity, and some of you are going to be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. You go through every one of the 7 churches in chapters 2 and 3, and he says, he who overcomes, not he who survives, because some of you are going to be killed, but the one who overcome by not bowing down to the beast or accepting that mark of the beast on whatever that was. You must be faithful until death, Revelation 2:10. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. It's sad. It really is sad what is about to happen to them. But he says, listen, this is what's going to happen to you. Some of you are going to go into captivity, and some of you are going to be killed. Remember, Jesus said, see, I have told you these things ahead of time. He's not talking about this, but when he tells them these things are going to happen, see, I have told you these things ahead of time so that you might know. They're being told this in the letter when they get to the 7 churches. This is what is going to happen to you. Things which must shortly take place. We got to go. Any questions? Watch the video. It's all in the video. And lots of graphics, lots of pictures. That's where we'll pick up next.